Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of The Real and the Rare. My name is Scott Morgan Roth, the Motor City Madmouth, along with Xavier McKnight, the X-Man. How you doing, Mr. McKnight?
We're doing good, Scott. How are you this evening?
Doing very well. Had a very busy week on the 8 days on the road, going up to Nashville, working my way down to Mobile for a night, and then, of course, spent time in the Panhandle. Glad to be back. Got a lot of work to do, but I'm glad that we're doing this broadcast tonight. I know you have some fresh set of ideas, and I'll let you go ahead and go right to them, Xavier.
Oh, yes, for sure. So what we've been missing the most on our television screen, for most of us, throughout the midst of this pandemic is the world of sports. As we know, things were shut down towards the first 2 weeks of March. Mainly this all kicked off when we first learned about Rudy Gobert having coronavirus. And that pretty much was the lead up to every single sports league, professionally and collegiately, team-wise and individually, all saying, nope, we have to put an end to all this stuff right now. We have to pause it right now. Well, there's now some good news in the air, especially towards the end of what we learned last week. Sports could be headed back by the end of July. In particular, I'm speaking about the MLB, the NHL, and the NBA. But the MLB could also be another question. We'll touch on that a little later.
Sure.
Very unhappy stars in that league right now. Understandably so. But, time will tell if we end up actually seeing baseball this year. But as far as the NBA and the NHL go, they are basically set to go. So, Scott, let me read off to you what NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman has planned for the NHL's comeback. He said earlier last week that 24 of the league's 31 teams are set to resume play. And the top 12 teams from each conference, based on point percentage when the regular season was halted on March the 12th, will be allowed to participate in the league's postseason's plan. Now, Scott, I need you to familiarize me a little with some of this because I'm not exactly 100% sure how this works because I'm not necessarily the biggest hockey fan. I'm working my way to starting to love hockey a little more, but I still have a ways to go with that. How many teams do we usually have that play in the NHL playoffs?
16.
And this is a long way from 16. We're now having an 18 jump here. And when I first heard this news last week, I had to go look up for myself how many teams that the NHL had in their league. And for 31 of those teams to be there and 24 of them to now have the opportunity to go into postseason play, you talk about an opportunity of a lifetime for some of these players and these teams. I mean, what are your thoughts on how the NHL is planning to make a comeback with all of this?
Well, you know what? You're talking to a person that grew up with the original six. Okay, then we've seen the playoffs grow year in and year out. But you know what? In this situation, for this year only, I've got no trouble with 24. You had a lot of teams fighting that were on the bubble, so they're just trying to make it fair by giving up those last so many games of the year that reward them anyways, and then the best team in the NHL usually ends up winning, because I think that's one of the best playoffs out there of the four professional sports. You talk about knock them down, drag them out, long overtime games. Let me tell you, the team that plays well in the Stanley Cup is so deserving. They really are. So I don't care about how many of them are. It would to go to 16 this year would be unfair because, again, to me, it just wouldn't make any sense. You got to give the bubble teams an opportunity to get in. I mean, and then go from there. So I think the NHL is getting it right. I really do.
Yes, I agree with you right there. The NBA is doing something very similar throughout the Western Conference, at least that's what they're planning. They have four bubble teams in that eighth spot in the Western Conference: the Memphis Grizzlies, the Portland Trail Blazers, the San Antonio Spurs, and the New Orleans Pelicans. And they're all going to give them a chance, shall these plans pass, to play in for that 8th spot. And I do believe that that's fair because with the games that were remaining in the regular season, you never know how things were actually going to end up playing out. So, I understand what the NHL is doing here, and I'm in total agreement with it. So, let's just finish this off by saying that the 189 games that were originally scheduled from March 12th through April the 4th, they will not be played. 24 teams will resume play, and as I stated earlier, the top 12 in each conference, based on points percentage, when the halt of the season happened on March the 12th, will be allowed to participate. Now, it should be noted that we are all still in phase 1 with this phase with the NHL. Phase 2 is expected to take place in early June. So that could be as soon as this week. Phase 3 is expected to take place no earlier than the first half of July, and the timing is set to be declared on when this playoff ranking will actually begin to take place. The rounds, the seedings, and the cities that these games and these matchups will take place in.
Now,
But
let me
I'm
point.
sure that they're. Well, go ahead.
Let me point out something, okay? I don't know how familiar you are with this, but Gary Bettman used to work under David Stern with the NBA until he got his own gig with the NHL. So anything that the NHL and the NBA do, there's familiarity with Bettman/Stern. So one's going to copy the other, if I may use the word loosely.
Well, no, I didn't know that, and I appreciate you bringing that to my attention. And when you say it like that, it does make a lot of sense of what's going on here right now. And as a matter of fact, they actually have the 2 hub cities that will be selected for the choices that they have from among the following cities: Chicago, Illinois; Columbus, Ohio; Dallas, Texas; Edmonton, Alberta, Canada; Las Vegas, Nevada; Los Angeles, California; Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota; Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania; Toronto, Ontario; and Vancouver. So we will see how this ends up playing out.
So
and maybe this is a period of time where I actually will end up becoming a hockey fan because we all could use all the sports and positivity that we could use right now. So I'm very excited at the potential of this plan going underway. Not exactly sure what's going to take place in phase 2, but I will be tuned in.
Yeah, I haven't looked at the list. Are you saying that LA is on the list for the NHL? They are. Well, you know what? That would make good sense for a couple of reasons. One, you could play some of the games out in Anaheim where the Ducks are at. 2, you have the Kings. And who knows, maybe the Forum would get in that rotation just to play games there where the Kings and the Lakers played originally. You have 3 viable stadium options to go to LA. I don't see any teams in Canada. I don't, because I think there's other choices better. Chicago or Minneapolis would be the 2 odds-on favorite to me. Chicago, again, you have the United Center, and you have the arena for which the DePaul Blue Demons play. So there's a couple venues. And, of course, in Minneapolis, St. Paul, you have where the Wild play in St. Paul, or you could go to the Target Center. You need at least an area with at least 2 venues to be able to play some of these bigger games. That's what I think. So the 3 cities that I've talked about make a lot of sense. If any city were to be any good in Canada, me personally, I would go ahead and give it to Toronto because you could still go ahead and play games at the old Maple Leaf Gardens on Carlton Street as one venue, even though it's like down to 1,200 people. But you're not playing them with people there anyhow. And of course, you have the arena for which the Raptors / Maple Leafs play. So that would be the only Canadian city for me that would make sense would be Toronto. But that's just speculation. But I'm giving you my reasons about why I think that those would be possible good places to play.
Well, yes, I mean, I definitely agree with you on all of that because the cities that you chose, as you said, these are high metropolitan area cities with great hockey audiences, a great hockey fan base there. And you talk about a way to start to rebuild and reboost the economy, which is what we have heard continuously from the different commissioners in the professional sports league, how they would like to use sports to help reopen and reboost the economy. This is one of the perfect ways to start doing it, because even if fans are not going to be allowed in, that part remains to be seen or not. But whether they are or they aren't, people are going to tune in to this content, and people are going to support these games. They're going to watch them. They're going to do whatever they have to do. And the league will make money off of this. Now, how much of a boost will it be to the economy? I'm not even going to try to take a guess at that. But it is going to bring in good revenue for the NHL. And I believe that the MLB and the NBA will also do the same thing. Now, once again, all of those cities I just read off, I'll read them off again. Chicago, Illinois, Columbus, Ohio, Dallas, Texas, Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, Las Vegas, Nevada, Los Angeles, California, Minneapolis and St. Paul, Minnesota, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Toronto, Ontario, and in Vancouver. Those are the teams that are those are the cities that are being selected as choices for the two hub cities. So we're not sure which one of those two cities will be chosen yet, but those are the two choices. And Scott, I'm in a total agreement with you on the cities that should be selected there. And there definitely should be a city from Canada selected there, because Canada is the NHL's league. Let's just be honest about that. Many Americans love hockey, but we know where the basis of hockey fans really reside when it comes to North America and the most passionate fans that there are.
Yeah, but I will say this, though. In recent years, you only have, 8 teams in Canada. The last team from Canada that won a Stanley Cup, I believe, was the Montreal Canadiens back in the 90s. There hasn't been a National Hockey League team that's carried Lord's Stanley Cup in quite a while. But yeah, there's no question the origin of the league started in Canada. But I'll tell you what, the United States and the world, especially the U.S., with all these bigger markets, I would say that they're much closer than most people would think.
Well, yes, for sure. And I also have to say this, too. It's really a shame that the Detroit Red Wings dynasty is not what it once was, and that dynasty has completely faded out. Because if the Detroit Red Wings dynasty was in full bloom, you can bet your bottom dollar that Detroit, Michigan would have been listed as a possibility for one of these two hub cities.
Oh, I'm not so sure about that either. I'll tell you why. Because you've only got the Little Caesars Arena out there. Where else would you go ahead and put them? I don't think so. And let me talk about the Red Wings for a moment. Thanks for bringing that up. I appreciate it. The Red Wings are right now in a little bit of a rebuild. They paid the price for 25 straight years going into the playoffs. Red Wings will be back in no time. I'm confident they'll right that ship real soon. So when you win, you pay the price long term, but nobody's going to ever complain that they won 4 Stanley Cups and made 6 Stanley Cup appearances. And I'll tell you what, ESPN and NBC can be very thankful, and for that matter, Fox, when they carry that feature the Red Wings on, and the NHL is a better place when the Red Wings are winning. Right now they're having a tough period, but I predict that in 1 or 2 years they'll be competing for sure. It's just a tough time, but that too will pass. But I don't think Detroit would have been considered as a venue, because they don't have a secondary place at all to house the games. Now, if the Palace of Auburn Hills were still active, then Detroit would be you'd have more, I give it more consideration right now than I would otherwise.
Well, I definitely see your point there, for sure. Now, let's move on to the NBA and that league's reopening plans. And we finally have a target date from Commissioner Adam Silver. It's not a definite, but it is a target date that they have spoke about. And it was released on Friday, and he's planning to get things back into the full swing of things by July the 31st. Now, it should be noted that all teams have not been allowed to allow their players and their coaches back into practice facilities yet. Different states have different rules and regulations going on right now, but some of these players, if not most of these players, are now back allowed in their team practice facilities. One that really came amongst my surprise, Scott, had to be seeing that the Lakers and the Clippers were going to be allowed back at their practice facilities. And the reason I say it came as a surprise to me is because just a few weeks ago, there were rumors being put out there that Los Angeles County could be put on lockdown for another 3 months. And then just a few days after that, Governor Gavin Newsom came out and he passed. Well, I'm not going to say that he passed a law because it's not a law, but he did come out with an executive order and an agreement that professional teams and facilities were open to reopen back up their practice facilities for their athletes to go in and do voluntary workouts, which means that some of the players who haven't done any in-court work since the league suspended the season on March the 11th, they now can go back in and get back into basketball shape. But, Scott, I do have to ask this, because with the NHL, it's different. And it's different with all sports, period. The NBA, it's one thing to just be in regular shape, and it's another to be in basketball shape. And the question that I'm going to pose to you is, do you believe that there is enough time being given for these players to be placed back in basketball shape to come out and give us the best quality of postseason basketball in the format that they're planning to give it to us? Or should we not necessarily have our hopes up for what it was that we were planning to see from a performance standpoint throughout the months of April and June, had things not gone the way that they went due to the coronavirus pandemic?
Excellent question. I think in this situation, the NBA should have played their last, the rest of their regular season to get the players in better game shape instead of jumping to the playoffs. I really do. But again, that's a decision that apparently they're not going to do. They're going to go right to the playoffs. And here's where the San Antonio Spurs actually benefit. If they get into the postseason this time, does that go toward their consecutive year streak, even though this is a team that would never have made the playoffs and that streak would have snapped? I'm not sure about that.
Yes, this actually would continue their streak because they would be continuing postseason play. And as you said, had this season continued in the way that it was going and things were to remain normal, listen, anything can happen, but out of those 4 teams that I named earlier as the bubble teams that will be allowed to play in for a playoff spot, the San Antonio Spurs, the Portland Trail Blazers, the New Orleans Pelicans, and the Memphis Grizzlies, the Spurs are the one team that I was already pretty much eliminating. As a matter of fact, I remember coming on this platform and saying that the run is officially over in San Antonio. Now, they've been given a second chance. And if you're talking about a one-game play-in possibility, that's where I don't bet against Greg Popovich. I don't bet against that experience. And he has a good staff of veteran players there. He has great assistants there as well. Becky Hammond and Spurs all-time great, now Pro Basketball Hall of Famer, Tim Duncan. I believe that he would be able to have that team ready to go, not only for a spot to get into the postseason, but depending on the amount of games that will be able to be played, it wouldn't surprise me if they went on a bit of a run and they knocked off one of those teams towards the top of the conference. I'm just saying that there. I mean, I understand that the Lakers have LeBron James and Anthony Davis, and they have the top record in the Western Conference, but we're talking about a coaching matchup here, and who would I much rather have? Greg Popovich or the Lakers head coach Frank, who I can't remember his last name on the tip of my tongue right now.
Vogel.
Frank Vogel, thank you.
You're welcome.
Would you rather have Greg Popovich or would you rather have Frank Vogel in a postseason matchup? I think that's a rhetorical question.
Well, I mean, I'll give you my opinion on it. First of all, in this case, I'd rather have Vogel because he has a lot better players. It doesn't hurt to have the best player in the game on there as well. In most cases, I'd say Popovich, just a rare exception. Another thing I should point out, too, though, is even though the Spurs would keep their playoff streak alive, I don't think that they get in at all anyways past the first round. They'll be a quick out. The NBA benefits by it is you have Zion Williamson and New Orleans getting, and that's where they're going to clean up on ratings, seeing this young, talented player play. So if you expand the field, then you open doors for other players that may not have gotten in this year, especially a guy like Williamson. And then you never know where it can go. I think the Pelicans were playing better before this hiatus took place, and now they'll have an opportunity to build on what they were doing. And you know what? A lot of teams will be rested. So I don't know. I'd go Vogel this time, Xavier.
Well, I can see exactly why you would say that, but if it's a one, it just depends. If it's a one, if it's similar to the NFL postseason, where it's one game you win and you advance, if you lose you go home. I'm just not so sure I would bet against Greg Popovich too many times. But by Vogel having the better players, one being arguably still the best player in the world, another being one of the top 8 players in the world in his own right, I can see exactly where you would say that. And I'll piggyback off what you said there about the New Orleans Pelicans. That was the team that I thought was going to end up getting that 8th spot anyway. The Memphis Grizzlies, Ja Morant, it was a nice story, but the fact of the matter is that team had lost Jaren Jackson Jr., another one of their rising young stars, and he was going to be out for some time. And there was only so much ground that Ja Morant was going to be able to cover. Now, once again, great young player. I believe he's going to be a great player and a great ambassador in the NBA for years to come. He's one of the reasons that I say you get back involved. If for anyone out there who may have fallen out of love with the game of basketball due to the state of where things are, Scott, we speak to this a lot, but I'll speak to it now. When you have stars in the game now like Giannis Antetokounmpo, Kawhi Leonard when he does choose to play, and of course, as everyone who listens to this platform knows, I do not agree with load management. But when Kawhi Leonard plays, I just love watching him play. And he wasn't going to load manage in the postseason. That's one thing we do know. But add these younger stars into the mix like Zion Williamson and Ja Morant, guys who have that competitive fire in them so deeply that they want to play no matter what. Let's just speak to Zion Williamson really quickly. He suffered an injury against North Carolina in a nationally televised game that was one of the most hyped up basketball games in college basketball for quite some time, because you have the new American basketball phenom playing with Duke going up against their arch rival North Carolina, who is having a nice season as well. You even have former President Barack Obama that was at this game. And not even 30 seconds into the game, Zion Williamson ends up suffering a minor knee injury that could have ended up being major, so he avoided major disaster right there. And we also were given the birth of the exploding shoe. And the aftermath of that was, what we kept hearing was Zion going to play in the NCAA tournament when he is cleared to play. And you had so many other people who were out here saying this kid should shut it down, he should shut it down, he should shut it down. He's got the NBA to worry about. He's got those big dollars to worry about. He's got a huge future ahead of him. Don't risk it for this. He didn't listen to any of that. He came back and he played. And Ja Morant, he plays the game really rugged and really tough as well. And I just say all of this to say that you miss the competitive fire of guys like the late, great Kobe Bryant, rest his soul. You miss the competitive fire of Michael Jordan, despite what you feel about him as a person or the locker room politics and things that they have played into play. You miss the competitive fire and the will to just go out there and get it from guys like Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Isaiah Thomas, and everyone from that great era of basketball. I believe that these young players that we have coming up now, they're going to be the change and the resurgence of basketball going back to something close to what it needs to be. Are we going to get the hand check era back? No, we're not going back to that. But as far as just having guys who want to play for the love of the game and wanting to go out there and compete at the highest level and give it everything that they've got, I believe we've got two good winners right there with Ja Morant and Zion Williamson. And no matter which one of them ends up going into the playoffs, because I don't believe Portland's going to get in, and San Antonio could surprise me, but I don't believe they'll get in. I believe it's going to be one of those two teams. They're going to give the Lakers some form of trouble. The Lakers will more than likely win the series, but they're going to put them on notice. Very similar to how when Dwayne Wade first came into the league and he took a horrible Miami Heat team and took them all the way to the postseason in his rookie year. They won in the first round, and they also gave Detroit a bit of a scare in that next round. And, well, it wasn't Detroit they played, it was the Indiana Pacers, excuse me. They played the Indiana Pacers in the 2004 semifinals, and that was a good Pacers team, good defensive team that they played up against. But you saw Dwayne Wade then as one of those young leaders in the game who would come out and give it everything that he had. Scott, I believe that's what we're getting now with guys like Zion Williamson and John Morant. And I don't have to speak anymore to the competitive fire of guys like Kawhi Leonard and Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add to that is I don't see any AC Greens walking through that door and anyone challenging his consecutive games mark. I mean, AC Green will always go down in my mind as one of the most underrated players to ever play the game. He never missed any games, to put him in the class of a Brett Favre, Luke Gehrig, Cal Ripken. Yeah, I think that's safe, and any other Ironman that you have. So, there is some new blood coming in. I give you that, Xavier, and I hope that some of these guys will play a lot of consecutive games. I think that the league needs guys that are not going to take time off. That these so-called routine injuries. I mean, come on, everybody plays. You play. You get paid to play the game. That's what you do. And regardless of what they think they're going to try to do, there'll be some intriguing matchups. I kid you not, but we'll find out how some of these other teams perform, even as they go 20-some deep in the playoffs. But again, the biggest problem I have with the NBA is how long you could drag these playoffs out. To me, it's beyond my wildest imagination. When you watch the hockey and you see so much hockey piled in to a certain period of time, then the NBA taking its sweet time to get to the pro season, that's what separates these two leagues mightily for sure. So we'll see. Interesting points.
Scott, here's my major concern about both of these leagues right now, and I'm glad you brought that up. My concern with them dragging this thing out, and this is not just for the NBA, it's for the NHL as well. The NFL is still currently scheduled to start on time. Training camps are still scheduled to start on time. The preseason is still scheduled to start on time. The regular season is still scheduled to start on time. And we're talking about sports in America now here. And as excited as we are at the possibility of basketball and hockey being back, and also potentially baseball as well, we'll touch on that in just a minute, we know in America the NFL is king. And
right.
It could be a postseason or a finals matchup going on. When you have the possibility of watching Tom Brady versus Drew Brees in week 1, or an NBA finals matchup that many might not necessarily care as much about, I believe you would have more eyes on that week 1 matchup between Tom Brady and Drew Brees, two, for lack of a better word, gunslingers going at it for some of their final times against each other. Tom Brady's first game as a Tampa Bay Buck, that would be. That's just one of the main problems I see for these leagues coming back during the time that they're talking about coming back. You're running right into the start of when the NFL and college football seasons will be expected to start.
Yeah, let me touch on a couple of other points where I think the NBA does have it right, is that they're now, by eliminating the regular season games, as I read about it, it looks like they'll be able to accommodate some of these players' families, and to do it at Disney World, to me, is phenomenal. This is one of those unique situations where you've got a lot of different basketball courts over at the Disney Wide World of Sports complex, and so much lodging that the NBA definitely has it right here in more ways than one. So you bring the families together as much as you can. You have that big bubble over at Walt Disney World with all the resorts and the numerous hotels in the Orlando area and numerous places that they can put all these teams, let alone the fact that it'll probably be, 24 of them anyways, or 23, I don't know what the amount is. But I think that, to me, is huge. It really, really is.
Yes, I definitely agree with you on that as well. You know, when the possibility of Orlando, Florida, and Disney World being the designation for the NBA to make its return first came out, and I first heard about it around April, I really had mixed feelings about it. I wasn't sure how much it was going to work. But the more we went through the month of May, Scott, and the more we just saw more businesses and more things opening back up, the more it made more sense to me for them to do this. And as you stated, the family factor in all of this, very important. Is very important. And when you think about the fact that fans may more than likely not be allowed in these venues, it just makes more sense right then and there to just bring these players together on a platform where they can come in, they can play basketball, but they can also spend time with their families. And, you know, the funny thing about that is they play some of these home games at home. And some of them do reside permanently in the cities that they play in. But because of the pressures that come with the playoffs on a normal basis, they might not be spending as much time with their families then. But when you think about what this pandemic has done and in the midst of everything and how we have continuously preached out this message of coming together, being together, I definitely believe it's a wonderful idea.
Well, I mean, think about it. The players get to play in Orlando near Disney World. Doesn't get any better than that, does it? The families get to hang out there. Obviously, Disney, they're not going to be taking them to Disney World with the kids. That's too much of a risk, and it remains to be seen when Disney's going to get back, but that'll be for another time. So the NBA gets it right here. They get an A+ in terms of planning and bringing it back over under Disney. It's not so clear-cut everywhere else as we get deeper into the broadcast. Hockey, I think we talked about scenarios, but the NBA, to me, gets it right in terms of the Orlando idea. And trying to get the families together as much as they can. Again, I wish they would be able to play the season out. But you know what? At least the advantage that the NBA had by playing most of the regular season games, and then you had the All-Star game, you still got, 60, between 60 and 70 games in anyhow. So it's a legitimate season regardless. Nobody can question that with the NBA for sure. And I give them a lot of credit. I have been critical of them being a drama league. It's turned off a lot of fans. Nobody wants to hear about their opinions. They just want them to play basketball. But when it came down to making crucial big decisions at crunch time, the NBA definitely got it right.
And with that being said, I'll use this point to transition into the MLB because on a normal basis, the NBA has 82 regular season games, and the MLB has 162 regular season games. Well, with the current plans that have been put in place by the owners of the MLB, they are planning for an 82-game regular season. Now, they were planning to make a comeback as early as mid-June, early July at the latest. I last heard about this in mid-May. The owners were all in agreement with it, but the players were not. But it had absolutely nothing to do with the scheduling. It had absolutely nothing to do with the venue. Scott, these players are in line to lose some big money the way that this current plan is being pushed out. And it's not the mid-level guys who bat maybe 6, 7, 8, and 9th in a lineup, guys who you may not know that much about, guys who may not make the most money on the team. No, it's guys like Max Scherzer who are coming out and speaking out against the MLB and the owners, and they are very angry and they are upset about the plan that's being put in place, in particular because of the money that would be lost. And when you start talking about the stars of your league, Max Scherzer, the ace of the Washington Nationals, or should I say one of the aces of the Washington Nationals, because Steven Strasburg does indeed deserve his respect as an ace in this league, especially for the job that he did in the 2019 postseason. But Max Scherzer is one of the faces of the league, and he's been one of the faces of the league since he's been on the Detroit Tigers, if you want to be honest about this. Maybe people didn't know that much about him because Justin Verlander was the Cy Young AL MVP award pitcher on that staff, and he was one of the main faces of baseball. But in his early years in Detroit, especially in the earlier years of the previous decade, Matt Scherzer was a problem for opposing batting orders to have to deal with. This translated over to Washington, where he continued to be one of the best pitchers in the game, winning Cy Young awards there as well. And now he's coming off of his first World Series. And he's one of the main voices that's being outspoken about the financial situation that the players will have to deal with should the MLB come back under its current plan. And that leads me to just simply ask this question. Scott, should we really realistically expect to see baseball this year? Because now I'm not so sure.
I can't believe you said it the way you did. I say absolutely not. And I'll tell you why. Absolutely not! Exclamation point. I had Mark Littell, our baseball analyst, on the Sports Exchange before we left town. And Mark said, you know what, the players are going to have to give a lot more back this time. The average fan is not going to sympathize with them at all. They really don't. The owners are losing $640,000 without fans in there. So why spend $640,000 or lose it per game? It makes no sense at all. Scott Boras has gone out, spoken, and said, why bail out the owners? Well, let me tell you something, Scott. Even though you have 71 clients that you represent, these owners are paying your 71 clients. So forget about whether they're billionaires or not. They're businessmen. They are. They feel like it's not worth it to operate their business, and you might as well just stay shut down. Again, another league. All these leagues depend on TV money, but what about the local TV revenue that's going to get lost as well, in addition to the national? So I'm not so sure you're going to see baseball this year. Unlike the other two where they have a plan, the players are now they want over 100 games to try to get paid more money. So the owners are thinking, yeah, that's unrealistic. Well, it's tough enough at 82, let alone add another 18 or 20 some games so that they get paid and the owners keep losing. Somehow my math here doesn't seem to be following me where I need to follow. You know what I mean? It just doesn't make any sense. So I don't think you're going to see baseball with these two, with the MLB Players Association and the owners at an impasse. I mean, and again, I don't feel bad. I won't have a bad feeling toward the players about it because this is a pandemic. When they struck, it was one thing because nobody was sympathizing with them. But for a pandemic where does it pay to have a league or not for the year, it's hard to tell. But the answer to your question is no, I don't think there'll be baseball unless they can come to a major compromise pretty quick. Because remember, you have at least perhaps 7 to 10 days back at spring training anyhow until we get going. And the longer it drags out, you're not going to see baseball deeper than October, I don't think. And, in previous broadcasts, Xavier, we talked about the Florida, Texas, and Arizona, and then you had Florida by itself, and then Arizona by itself, and then Florida and Arizona together. There was a lot of different scenarios, and nobody was happy. They just can't seem to get on the same page about anything. But again, you won't see it, fans rebel against baseball because they're not going to games anyhow, so it doesn't matter. They just want to see it on TV. Hope that answered your question.
It does, and to add on to your point about baseball possibly not going past October, in the latest plans that they were coming up with, they were willing to actually go as far as playing into the first week of December to try to give us the best experience that they possibly could do with the circumstances that are being given. And just simply because I'm a person who believes in never say never, I don't want to completely cancel out the possibility of us seeing baseball this year, but it would really surprise me if we did at this point. And for the first time in a long time, Scott, I believe the game of baseball is in trouble. I believe the MLB is in some serious trouble, and they are now headed back into a direction very similar to where they were in 1994 when that strike took place mid-season.
Well,
it's not a good place for the game to be in right now.
I see similarities there, but I wouldn't go that far. But my question to you is, okay, you're playing in December, okay? Where are you playing these games? Are you going back to the warm weather climates, or are you just going to play them strictly in dome stadiums?
Well, see, that's the part that was not thoroughly explained at all throughout that plan. That was just listed as a possibility to try to not have to rush through a postseason necessarily. Now, where they plan to play these games, that part remains to be seen if this were to take place. But, once again, it's a questionable time for Major League Baseball, because they were slowly getting back to getting the average fan included back into the game. Because, Scott, I believe we have been going through a massive amount of years throughout the past 20 years at least, where most of the fans who were watching the game were diehard baseball fans and not necessarily just the casual fan. Now, I believe around 2015, when we had that Kansas City Royals feel-good story, followed up in 2016 by the Chicago Cubs 108-year curse coming to an end, then followed up by the Houston Astros, before we learned everything that we learned about them about 6 months ago, coming out, their story in 2017, not only winning their first World Series, but bringing some hope to the city of Houston after what Hurricane Harvey did to that city. I believe we had a lot of good feel-good stories that were building up. And then you follow that up not only in 2018 and in 2017, one of your big name brands, the Los Angeles Dodgers, representing the National League in the World Series. And in 2019, of course, you have the Washington Nationals feel-good story. So combining these feel-good stories and these big brands together, I believe they were getting back to a point of slowly building the game back up, because I know a lot of people who aren't necessarily baseball fans, but they were very intrigued by what the Washington Nationals were doing. And some of those same people, you go back to 2015, wow, the Kansas City Royals are about to win a World Series for the first time in 30 years. That's pretty interesting. The Chicago Cubs in 2016, they're about to break a 108-year streak that seemed doomed to never end. Yeah, that's good TV. And they're going up against the Cleveland Indians, who are trying to break their franchise first and add on to what the Cleveland Cavaliers of the NBA had just done months prior to that, bringing a championship to Cleveland for the first time in 52 years. They were making for a lot of must-see TV moments. And now I'm not so sure what happens with that if baseball is not played this year.
Well, let me point a couple things out to you when you talk about the Washington Nationals. In 1994, the Montreal Expos should have won the World Series back then. The strike killed that. But what makes the Washington Nationals World Series even better is not only did they win the World Series, and Scherzer and company, they did it without Bryce Harper, but they beat a team that was involved in a sign-stealing scandal. So therefore, when you look at the fact that they overcame something that most teams couldn't, more power to the Nationals for pulling off the ultimate doubleheader sweep. They redeemed themselves in 94 as the Expos and beat a team that was caught cheating. And I tell you what, no matter where these sports are, I don't think any asterisk should ever be given out to any of them due to the unprecedented circumstances for what you're dealing with. But again, the Astros winning the World Series was all fine and dandy until they found out they ended up winning it not on a fair playing field.
Yes, I'm 100% in agreement with you on all of that. I now just continue to have this question of where does baseball go from here if they don't play this year? And that is a huge concern to me.
I don't have that concern. I don't. because again, you know what? Circumstances being what they are, they've got to agree on the money, and these guys haven't been paid at all. So, how long can players go without earning a paycheck? These other guys that we're talking about, these big name players, they got enough money in their pocket. But what about the other players? They're the middle class / lower class. That's another story. They probably comprise 75% of the players that aren't getting paid. So I don't know, me personally, whether I would really make as big a deal about the Stars getting paid, because they've gotten paid a boatload of money. And again, you're looking at a sport where you have no fans anyhow, so I don't see any kind of animosity coming back. So I understand the big names want to get paid, but I also understand from a business perspective, the owners don't want to lose $640,000 a game. They don't. 50-50 split at this point, to me, is better than no money at all. But yet the players might be thinking, what happens if I injure an arm or a ligament, have a knee injury? Does that set me up? Well, you know what? You run the risk of getting hurt in every sport, so I don't think I could jump on that wagon at all either. So it depends on who will compromise and who can hold out longer. But I don't think that this baseball situation comes close to the 94. Again, you know what? You cancel a season because you can't come up with terms for payment. And there are no winners in this situation. It's all losers. It's just who's willing to lose the least. How would you feel like it?
I can definitely see your point in all of this. And, hopefully this doesn't end up being a crucial point in the history of baseball where it creates lots of negativity and things that the game doesn't need. And when I say negativity, I don't mean negative headlines. I mean just simply from the standpoint of sending the game and sending that league to a point of where they're almost faltering. Hopefully we don't get to that point.
Well,
go ahead.
I emphasize here, when we had Mark Littell on the program, here's a guy that experienced several work stoppages, and he even said it, and he was adamant about it. Mark Littell, I don't know if you ever talked to him before. I'll have to get that set up with you one day. But Mark Littell says these guys are going to have to really show a little sympathy toward the fans and then bite the bullet this year. And he's really right, because he's experienced a lot of different work stoppages, and I think that's where the players are going to have to come to realize it. I'll ask you the hypothetical. Would you rather pay for a 50-50 split than get something, or you want to go a year without a paycheck? You tell me.
No, I'd much rather pay the 50-50 split.
Right. I would too. Something better than nothing. But, and the average individual out there will feel that way as well. You guys, look at the unemployment rate across the country. Look at all this, that's bad. They're not getting any sympathy, but then neither sides are, because they both the owners are billionaires and the players are millionaires, but they're still getting paid handsomely. But that's what I think about.
Well, yes, I definitely agree with you there. And with that being said, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. This has been another great edition of The Real and the Rare, and hopefully the NHL, the NBA, and the MLB are definitely on their way back, because we are all at a point where we definitely could use some sports and entertainment on our TVs to take us away from the realities of all the things that are going on in our country and our world right now.
By the way, folks, you are listening to The Real and the Rare. We are live tonight on WSAN Network. My name is Scott Morgan, from Motor City Madmouth, along with my co-host Xavier McKnight. We're having a lot of fun talking about, hopefully, some sports in the coming months. It just depends on which ones are going to get going and which ones aren't. So with that said, okay, you don't talk about auto racing. What are your thoughts about some of the sports that have actually gone on? NASCAR's taking advantage of their open. They've done well with it. I think golf is in the game, and we have a few things that are currently going. UFC, MMA's back, and of course I can see boxing at some point. What are your thoughts about the sports that are currently in progress?
Well, they've definitely done the smart thing and taken advantage of the opportunity that they have ahead of them right now. With some of the other major sports that would be stealing all of the headlines in only sports like that, but you look at the companies like mixed martial arts and professional wrestling. They're doing a good job of taking advantage of all of this during this time too. So the commissioners and the chairmen of those leagues, they're doing a very good job there. And, I'll also now take the time to give them a special shout out, thank you, and kudos for doing everything they can to provide us with some form of entertainment while also making sure that they are doing everything they can to secure the safety and well-being of their athletes and coaches in those respective leagues, if they do have coaches in those leagues, meaning in terms of professional wrestling and mixed martial arts. But, just a thank you to all of them for what they're doing right now to get us through this time that we're going through and to provide us with some form of entertainment. And, you look at things that happened last Sunday, like Peyton Manning and Tiger Woods teaming up in a charity golf off against Phil Mickelson and Tom Brady. That was just really good TV. And under normal circumstances, of course, that probably wouldn't even have been arranged like that because people probably wouldn't have cared as much to watch it. But that was really good entertainment. That was really good TV. And, we just hope that we can now get back to getting closer to getting some form of sports in the current day and not going back and watching highlights and replays of games that were played 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah, I'm actually glad you brought the Mickelson, Woods, Peyton Manning, and Tom Brady. That was good, and I think you might see more of those. Also, I had a chance during this sports drought to watch cornhole stuff, and I must have been really desperate there to go ahead and watch it. But you know what? These are some of the other sports that don't necessarily get any attention whatsoever, and now people have a chance to look at it. Let's just see what, have a little bit of a peek in there. I'm not going to tell you that I'm watching cornhole all the time, but again, these are sports that never got any notoriety, but because of a crisis like this, unprecedented times, more power to any sports that can go ahead and get some exposure. But yeah, I think NASCAR has done a great job. And you know what? We might be finding new trends where you've got announcers that aren't going over to these events and they might be doing remote broadcasts. There could be so many different things that you come out of these broadcasts that one would never have thought about at all in terms of reducing the risk of travel. I don't know. Those are things that we'll find out as time goes on. But yeah, we should. I think NASCAR's been brilliant to be able to go ahead and clean up with all this extra time. More power to those at Fox, and they also depend on that television money as well. You have Fox, you have NBC. I think it'll be later this year, and it's great to see. It really, really, really is. So I'm happy that motorsports can get in there as well. So we've seen a lot of good things during this pandemic for sure.
And before we decide to end the show, let me just say that while we are awaiting the return of actual sports to return, ESPN is continuing to do us solids, and they are releasing some 30 for 30 documentaries, more new ones, in the weeks leading up to when we hope to have sports back. They are finishing up with their Lance Armstrong 2-part documentary series tonight. I haven't really had a chance to look at it yet, but I'll take a chance and look back at that thoroughly when I have a chance to. We are getting a documentary on the 1998 race between Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa, the home run race, and better known as a time period that really saved baseball. And we are also getting a documentary about Bruce Lee. So thank you to that network and everyone who's working to put those projects together too, to provide us with some form of entertainment, especially for us content producers and broadcasters who need fresh content to discuss.
Let me tell you, I've experienced my challenges here on the WSAN network and the South Florida Tribune, but I've embraced the challenge of trying to keep it real and rare, as you are listening to the real and rare. So I think anybody that's in the media right now definitely has to find out what they're made of, and this, in times like this, enable you to find out what you're really all about. So, but again, another great broadcast with you, Xavier. Let me point out for the first time on the real and the rare, that the WSAN network, formerly the South Florida Tribune Broadcasting Network, was introduced with the intent so that we could go ahead and build a national presence And I'm glad that we're able to do that. A show that I'm really excited to see grow, and I'm obviously looking forward to having you on it. It's called No Limits. That'll be the one show where we will not talk sports at all. We will not. I mean, it would have to be something very major to consider talking about sports, but I wanted a show which gives us an opportunity to examine every single topic on the planet except religion and politics. So that's a show that we're excited to get the ball rolling. We already had a introductory broadcast, but stay tuned, folks. This is one thing where our platform isn't about sports only. There's a lot of news and a lot of ideas that need to be brought up to the forefront, and we're glad that we'll be able to provide you with that soon. So, any closing thoughts, Xavier?
No, once again, it's been a great show with you, Scott, and hopefully we've been able to provide everyone with a fresh form of entertainment to just take your minds off of everything that's going on in our country right now. We won't get into specifics and details about that tonight. Well, we look forward to you all tuning in with us on Wednesday, where we will be discussing most of, if not all of those matters. But just want to reiterate a message to everyone, stay safe, stay strong, be smart, and we'll get through this thing.
Absolutely, and I'm glad that you're going to be the first person on the No Limits. I've been debating about what I want to do, but then all of a sudden the George Floyd came up, and I know there'll be a lot of opinions out there to be shared, and this is something that I'm really, really excited to have you on. You've been with me longer, for close to a couple of years, so I might as well... I hate to think I can call you an elder statesman because you're in your 20s, but you're the elder statements of you're statesman of our broadcast, and please take that as a first-class compliment. But
I most definitely do.
You can't always be first at everything, but you're destined to be first in a lot of ways, the way I think. And for you to be on No Limits, we'll definitely looking forward to bringing you that broadcast this coming Wednesday night here on the WSAN network. So. Any other closing thoughts? I should let people know. Why don't you let people know how they can follow you, Xavier?
Yes, you can follow me on Twitter at XTMCKNIGHII. The two I's at the end are both capitalized. You can follow me on Instagram at XMCKNIGH22. And you can send me a friend request on Facebook and follow me on LinkedIn, or request to follow me on LinkedIn. Both of those platforms, just simply typing in the name Xavier McKnight.
And on our end, you can always follow every broadcast on the South Florida Tribune. Go to www.southfloridatribune.com. We'll have a list of our shows. You can follow those and listen to them as often as you want. Download them, subscribe them. Some of the major media distribution partners that we have are iHeartRadio, Spotify, Spreaker, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, to name a few. I can be reached on LinkedIn as Scott Morganroth. Feel free to send me a connection request. And you can also follow us on Twitter at Tribune South, and on Facebook you can just like the South Florida Tribune page. And I also have a YouTube channel, South Florida Tribune, as well. Follow that. We have a lot of different ways you can reach us. If you want to email us, feel free to do so at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. I'll be more than happy to get back to you as soon as we possibly can do it. So there's no shortage of ways to reach us. And I know, Xavier, why don't you if you want, you can share some insights about what you do on a regular basis if you're interested in doing so.
Yes, for sure.
So you work up in Bradenton, Sarasota area, is that correct?
Yes, I work in Sarasota, Florida at WWSB ABC7, a local ABC affiliate here, as a digital content producer.
Long way from your days of being a sports information director at Savannah State, isn't it, Xavier?
It definitely is, but I'm just appreciative and blessed for this entire term.
Well, I got news for you. You know what? You've been a very big asset to what we've done, and like I said, I take pride in a lot of the people I work with, and without a doubt, we've done a lot of good things together. On the Sports Exchange, you have your own broadcast, and now you'll have an opportunity to more or less appear in your third different show. So, we like to make sure you get out there, and that's exactly what we're going to do. So, again, George Floyd will be our topic of conversation on Wednesday night. And like anything else we've had to deal with, it's something that we have to get out, and I think that we have a strong message that will be heavily prepared to deliver it on Wednesday. So meanwhile, folks, hope you had a great weekend. And when, on behalf of Xavier McKnight, my name is Scott Morgan, Rother Motor City Madmouth, along with the X-Man, wishing you a good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.